Disaster, a word that can mean problems. While you often cannot avoid disasters, preparation in advance can help. Here to explain is Bill Wilcox, Administrator, Federal Disaster Assistance Administration. What is a natural disaster?
The answer may surprise you. A natural disaster is a severe weather event where a great many people are adversely affected. If we have a severe weather event hit a area which is not occupied by large numbers of people, it would not be considered a disaster. So you need the two factors, the severe weather and people to be adversely affected by it.
How much damage is necessary to justify a major disaster declaration by the President?
There is no hard and fast rule. What we do is evaluate the situation, how intensive the damage is, whether there's been loss of life or not, how much individual, as distinct from governmental damage, has occurred, and then the Federal Disaster Assistance Administration makes a recommendation to the President as to whether he should issue a disaster declaration, and on the basis of the material that we provide him and the recommendation, he then makes a decision.
What other role does the Federal Disaster Assistance Administration play when a disaster occurs?
Once the President has made a decision to issue a major disaster declaration, the Federal Disaster Assistance Administration activates a whole series of programs. Really, basically, it has two roles. One is to coordinate all of the various federal agencies which provide assistance, and the other role is to manage a number of governmental programs to assist state and local governments and individuals. And it's important to emphasize that the role of the federal government is always supplemental to that of the state and local governments.
When you say supplemental, what do you mean by that?
What we mean is that the federal government is to act only when the capacity of the state and local governments to deal with the problem has been taxed to the limit. Also, we mean supplemental in the sense that the federal government follows the leadership of state and local governments. We believe that the state and local officials know the needs of the local people much better than federal officials do, and so our activity is both supplemental and subordinate to state and local governments.
Can local or state governments provide assistance to individuals by using federal funds?
There is a program of assistance to individuals which is funded 75% by the federal government and 25% by the state. The program is administered by the state government, although local officials sometimes provide people to work on the program. The maximum grant is $5,000, and other resources have to be exhausted, such as borrowing from the Small Business Administration, before an individual or family can be eligible for this individual grant program.
Well, after a disaster, it's obvious there are many hard decisions to be made. Who makes all of the decisions on the disaster recovery procedures in a particular disaster?
Well, because of the nature of disasters, it's necessary to decentralize operations very much, so that when we make a recommendation for a disaster declaration to the President, we also recommend the appointment of a federal coordinating officer. And that federal coordinating officer really, on behalf of the President, coordinates all of the various federal agencies.
Bill, where do the volunteer agencies like the Red Cross fit into a disaster recovery job?
The role of the volunteer agencies in disasters is a very important role. In fact, traditionally and historically in America, volunteer groups have always played an important role, particularly in times of stress, such as a disaster. Without the assistance of volunteer agencies, the cost to the taxpayer of disaster response would be very much greater than it actually is.
If I were a disaster victim, how would I get help?
There is a very specific and precise answer to that question. The state agencies and the federal agencies join together in establishing disaster assistance centers. They may be located in a gymnasium or in other school facilities, and disaster victims come to the Disaster Assistance Center, sometimes they're called one-stop centers, where all of the various government programs are available to assist disaster victims.
This program has been presented by this station as a special public affairs feature from the Federal Disaster Assistance Administration.